We're at chapter 44, which is a very, very powerful chapter. This chapter deals
We're at
with...
chapter 41.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I don't know how 44 got into my head. 41, thanks. We've got people listening, and that's what we want. We want comments, we want conversation. So thanks, Rick. That's great. We're in chapter 41, and this is a powerful chapter. We've just gone over the importance of kavanah, of what we call intention, whenever we do anything Jewish, any mitzvah, any learning. And the Alter Rebbe, our teacher in this class, this Hasidic master and kabbalistic master, defines kavanah as both love and awe or reverence. That's ahava and yira in Hebrew, love and awe, as they're directed to any mitzvah we do, anything you do at Temple Israel, any learning you do here. If I just do them dry by rote, that's without kavanah. It's still a mitzvah, it still has the value of that. But then when I pour in both my love and my reverence, now, as the Alter Rebbe describes, I give that mitzvah a soul, and I give it two wings with which it can elevate. And you can see in our past classes all the Kabbalah and the spiritual worlds of where you can elevate your mitzvahs. It's pretty fun and far out. We won't get into it now. But that kavanah, that's what elevates the mitzvahs and the Torah that we all do. Now, in this chapter, and through chapter 49, the Alter Rebbe is going through separating out love and reverence, ava and yira, showing us how they fit together, and also, as we'll learn, giving us many meditations that we can use in our meditative system we're using at this point to elevate our Torah mitzvahs to a higher and higher level through meditation, through generating this kavanah. The first point the Alter Rebbe made is that of the two, of yira and ahava, of awe and love, it is actually not love, but it's yira. It's a awe or reverence that is foundational. Now, foundational doesn't mean it's more important, but foundational means it has to come first. Right? I'm now in a house. I've got a green screen behind me, but this is my house. I wouldn't say that the foundation of the house is the part of the house that's most important to me, right? I mean, my kids' bedrooms are more important. Our kitchen, our dining room, where we eat and have guests over, God willing, more and more, is more important. But, of course, I couldn't build those rooms until the foundation was poured. So the foundation had to come first in my house. Doesn't make it more important, but anyone who builds a house knows you got to pour the foundation first. The rest goes on top of it. That makes sense. The same thing with the relationship between reverence and love. The Alter Rebbe says the first thing you got to do, the core and the beginning of any way of serving God, is by getting at least a baseline of reverence. And as I shared, he gives us an example. Well, this is from a teacher who teaches the Tanya. We shared an example of if I came home with a dozen roses in my hand because I love my wife and I'm so romantic, but I'm home 3 hours late for dinner and she's been sitting with the cold food staring and wondering where I am. Those roses don't seem very loving. They don't seem very romantic because I didn't leave enough room for my wife to make space to say, I'm sorry, I won't be home on time, please put the food away. If I don't start with a baseline of respect or of awe, then that love doesn't really flow the way it should. Once I do have that baseline, now the love can flow and I have both wings. I'm just going to let someone else in the class here. Then he gave us a profound meditation that we're actually meant to do every morning. I did it this morning before I did the Shema. And also we're supposed to touch on it every time we're going to sit down to do a mitzvah or to get up to do a mitzvah. And that is, I should put into my wisdom gateway that we've created through our meditation, I should put into my mind the image, as much as I can, of the Ein Sof that is completely infinite, surrounding the worlds, filling the worlds. The worlds are nothing compared to the Ein Sof. And yet, God is leaving aside the higher worlds, the higher creations, and is paying direct attention to me, and cares and needs me to accept what we're calling Ratzon Elyon, God's will. That's the highest part of the Sfirot. Wants little me, little Michael Smolash, to actually accept what God wants, the right thing and not the wrong thing. and that I should fill my mind with that sense that God is actually right in front of me, searching my mind, my heart, my guts, to see, am I treating this day and the people around me and the world with the reverence that I should, as if God is watching me directly, standing right in front of me. And that meditation, if you go over the classes we've learned, will fill us with maybe not the most lofty awe, as we're going to learn in the future, but with at least a baseline of awe of, I don't want to, if there's something that the Ein Sof doesn't want, why would I want to do that, right? If I'm sitting in front of my wife, I know she hates a particular movie, why would I launch into a long story from the movie she hates? I just wouldn't, because I have respect for my wife. I don't want to offend her or rub her the wrong way. Same thing with the Ein Sof. It's not that we have any fear of punishment. It's not that at all. The Alter Rebbe never mentions that in the whole chapter. It's that we have an awe, and we're so overwhelmed by the greatness of the Ein Sof that we just, why on earth would I do something that was against what the Ein Sof wanted me? Why would I lie? Why would I yell? Why would I steal? Whatever it might be. And then we went through a few pieces about, okay, if you don't feel it full-fledged in your heart, it's okay to still have it in your mind. I won't go into that in detail. But the key we got to is the second reason why it is that yira, that reverence, is the beginning point, the foundation, and that is what we said at the top of page 607. Just like an ox, you have to place a yoke on it first to make it useful. So a human has to submit to the yoke of heaven, and if it's not found in us, if that submission is not found, holiness can't rest in us. Holiness, Kedusha. What is Kedusha? Kedusha means there's no me, there's no ego. If there's a me, if there's an ego that's in the way, now that's Michael Smolash. That's not Kedusha. I am an existing being. I'm separate from the infinite. I'm not part of that oneness that we call Kedusha. I can't begin to have a relationship with holiness. I can't begin. And so my love is always going to contain that ego. And no matter how high that love goes, no matter how lofty and fiery that love gets, it's built on a foundation where I'm still there. There's still a separate me that's loving, and it's always going to be there. It's only through yira, through awe or reverence, that I get that self-nullification, that surrender that we call bitul, where now I can be gone. Because when I'm in front of someone that's so great, it's not about me anymore. It's about what they need. I'm starting from their point of view, and now I'm out of the way. And so if I have that bitul, if I start with that first level of reverence or awe, now I can build love on top of that, and it's a different kind of love. It's a love without that ego identification. But if I'm missing that, if I just go on the love side, and I haven't gotten my ego out of the way, now there's always a me in there, and as he said, Kedusha cannot dwell on anything that I'm doing, on my mitzvahs, on my learning, on myself. I haven't even gotten started, unfortunately. So this meditation will get us on the right path, and then we can build both wings to be strong and to fly way up. So before we go inside, any questions? Let me check Facebook and see if there's any comments there. So you guys, if you're one of the people with us, please put comments here. I'm going to get them started.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Eleanor.
To me, remember we have an S word.
Yeah.
There's a new S word that has come up to me, and it's the word servant. It just gave me a negative connotation.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the S word. We have two S words, right?
Now we got a new one. Because to me, it almost felt like slave, and I don't want to be anyone's slave or servant. But I heard you say, I have the correction. I heard you say that we should do what God asks us to do. And there's a difference to me that somebody is asking me to do as opposed to being a servant or a slave.
So normally I would go with the sort of I want to call it the sort of positive side and the lean on the positive on this topic. But Eleanor, I think that question really touches on exactly this. So let's look at it, right? The difference between somebody making me do something, right? Somebody saying, "You're my servant. Get up in the morning and dig this hole because I need to build a new structure." And I know, okay, 6 in the morning, I'm up, I'm digging. I don't want to do this, but it's not about me. And they're not asking me, right? I'm their servant, right? They're not asking me. They're telling me. And I wake up as a servant, or in the old days as a slave even. That was a reality that, we don't want slavery to exist, but it's a reality we can draw from for our spiritual growth. If I put myself in the role of a slave, I get up and I do it, and it's not about me at all. So that feels not nice. I don't like that either, right? It is an S word for sure. Whereas if someone asks me to do it, now it's like, so they're my friend, and now it's my choice, and it feels good, right? Because I'm doing it because they asked me, and I feel like I'm respected, and I'm there, I'm valued, so I feel good about it, right? I mean, am I kind of reflecting your sense of the two positions there?
Well, it also means that I can value them and I can respect them because they've asked me.
Yeah, so I matter, right? What I think matters, right? You've asked me, now I can show my respect to you because I have a choice.
Right.
That's all there. So I totally agree with you, and I agree that feeling like a servant, it's not a fun feeling. I don't like it either. But unfortunately, that's exactly the point that we're making in some ways, right? Because everything we've talked about, that I have a chance to show the other person I respect them, that so my contribution matters, that I have free will in this, that's my choice to do, that I was asked, they considered me. All those things put me, maybe in a subtle way, and in a relationship, this is a healthy thing to do, right? I'm not saying we should have slaves or boss each other around. In a relationship between us, it's healthy to do exactly what you're saying. But if I have that in my relationship with God on the Yira side, now is that really Yira? Right? Have I taken myself out of the picture, or am I saying, you know what, I need to feel like you're respecting me here, because now that's me again, right? I need to feel like it's my choice. Well, that's me again. So as much as I agree with you that I feel better about being consulted and not being a servant, etc., this basic side of Yira, it actually is exactly that. And it makes us feel uncomfortable. But it's uncomfortable for my ego to be gone. So, I mean, do you hear what I'm saying? Like really, in fact, I want to kind of double down on this servant idea, that's all those things you mentioned are important in human relationships. But for triggering Yira that will create the conditions for holiness, which means getting myself entirely out of the way, it's actually the opposite. It's exactly that icky servant feeling where you know what? I'm going to do this because I don't want to, but because, Judaism says I should, the world seems to need me to do it. I'm going to do it even though no one's asking me. No, it's not, it's not about me, and it doesn't even feel good. That's where Yira starts. And it's a tricky thing for us to talk about in the Reform movement, maybe, and for all kinds of reasons. But do you hear what I'm saying? Like that's exact. You almost put your finger right on the point.
No, I hear what you're saying, and I can get all that feeling without the word servant being between me and God.
Okay, we don't need to use the word servant, and feel free to translate. You can be a helper, assistant. So the English, but Yira. That's
Right.
I'm not so tied on Eved, although we'll get into it. So yeah, we're probably gonna bring that up again, but. The idea is about the reverence and awe. So, if for you the path of, or the idea of a servant kind of bounces you out, then I would avoid it.
Right.
Yeah, Maxine?
Yeah. It seems to me that he always gives people an out, no matter what we're discussing. So if you don't achieve A level, earn an A, he always says, well, C work or B work is okay too, and therefore you're fulfilling the commandment or whatever.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I think because he's such a humanitarian that, he makes allowances for people knowing that.
100%. This book was written for every single Jewish person. So it is directed to everyone at every so-called level. I wouldn't give them marks, because as we'll see, sometimes what looks like the lower level of work actually is accomplishing a higher, more important result. We haven't gotten to that yet, but yes, I totally agree that whatever level of awe we're working at, the Alter Rebbe has a pathway where that is can be your life's purpose. Good. I see we're in a talkative mood, which I like. I, it's so boring when I just go on myself and nobody like brings stuff up. So here at top of 609, let's start furthermore. ועוד שבאמת מקיים גם מצוות יראה במה שממשיך היראה במחשבתו.
Furthermore, as a matter of fact, he not only fulfills the obligation of service, he also fulfills the commandment of fearing God by introducing the fear into his thought, by thinking about it and seeking to arouse it.
So we've just been talking about, as Maxine said, the different levels of actual emotion that I might experience, that all of them function as service. All of them will elevate Torah mitzvahs properly. But even if all that I can do, I don't feel it in my heart genuinely, even in my mind, it's not full of fear. I just have introduced the thought. So it's like I think that I should think I fear, right? I'm thinking about what I should think, so to speak. So it's just at that level. I'm just picturing in my mind, oh, if God is creating everything and looking right at me, I should be in a state of reverence or awe. That is plenty, and that serves to elevate Torah mitzvahs. And then, as I introduced last week, we're going to introduce this idea, and it's a perspective one can use really to get to a very, very high functioning place. That how do I behave when I'm alone versus how do I behave when someone is watching me? We see, and we know it all from our lives, right? When I'm on my own, I might permit myself certain behaviors that I don't think are proper. They're not ones that I aspire to. And as soon as I know, there's someone working on something in the house, a stranger that I don't know, who doesn't have any power over me, I won't do those things simply because someone's watching me. Not that they have power over me, not that they're necessarily greater or less great than me. I'm not overawed by them. Just simply knowing someone's around going, huh, look at him, right? That's enough to put me in a very high functioning state. So let's go on. כי בשעה ורגע זו על כל פנים מורה שמיים עליו על כל פנים כמורה בשר ודם, הדיוט לפחות שאינו מלך המביט עליו. Susan, why don't you go ahead?
Sorry, I just unmuted.
Okay.
For at this hour and moment, at any rate, there rests upon him the fear of heaven, at least like the one's fear in the presence of an ordinary mortal, even not a king who is watching him.
So when I'm at that state where I've just introduced the thought to my mind's not full of awe, my heart's not racing, just introduce the thought, okay, God is actually standing watching me. What happens? Now I'm going to behave really as if someone's watching me, and even if that person were not the Ein Sof or Lahavdil, the Biden or some massive ruler with power, if they were just a normal human, an everyday person, still what would happen? שנמנע בעבורו מלעשות דבר שאינו הגון בעיניו.
And he would refrain from doing anything unseemly in the other's eyes.
What? Noreen, that was really smooth. You were muted, and then as you started reading, you were unmuted, like you had it down to a T.
Oh, want me to say it
Did
again?
you do something special? That was cool.
Mm.
Never mind. I was impressed, but that was an aside. It was nice work of technology. So I'm not full off for the UPS delivery person or the someone in the checkout line next to me in the store, but just someone's watching me, so I'm not going to do something that they would go, ooh, right, or whatever, right? I'm just not going to do it. That's all. That's a high functioning state if we can maintain it all the time. And so when I introduce that idea into my mind, God is watching me literally, so I should have awe. Now I'm going to behave as if at least a person's watching me. And if I can stay there for the majority of my interactions in the day, trust me, that's going to be a quite high functioning state. And here we bring in a Gemara. Shezo nikret yira, kmo shema Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, l'talmidav yehi ratzon, shehe mora shamayim alechem k'mora basar v'dam chulu.
This simple expression of fear is termed fear, as Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai said to his disciples, may it be God's will that the fear of the heaven be upon you like the fear of a human being.
So we described this story where Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was on his deathbed, and his disciples wanted a blessing from this big tzaddik, and these were, some of the greatest students of their time. Who knows which of them would be the next gadol of the next generation? It was a big moment, and they knew, big tzaddikim would give blessings, and they saw themselves, here we are, at the peak of holiness. What's our master going to bless us with? And he says, may it be God's will that the fear of heaven be upon you, like you fear the milkman. Right? I got to see their faces, right? When they're standing, waiting for this big blessing. And he's like, you should get to the level the same way you fear, a passing pedestrian. I want you all to aspire to that level. Like what? So what am I doing now? What? That's my life's goal. And he says, Alavai, you should get that fear. If only you guys could actually get to that level. Because even if we just have that idea in my mind that the Ein Sof, that God is watching me, and I got to do what God wants me to do, and I can't do otherwise, right? That's the same. That's going to get me to a high level as if just any other person's watching me and I don't do anything inappropriate. And if I can keep that awareness in my mind, I will stay at that level. We may not realize that's a very high level, because how often when we mess up, when we need to apologize, when we need to do tshuva, it wasn't because I didn't have the potential to overcome the challenge. It wasn't because I didn't have the potential to function at a high level. I just let myself go. I figured, this time, or I'm on my own, or who's going to notice, or whatever. And if someone had been there in the room with me, I just wouldn't have done it. It would have just come and gone, right? So if I can have that constant awareness, that mindfulness, that in fact, not only is just anybody watching me, God's self is actually watching me, and not just looking at my actions, but every thought, everything in my heart, everything in my guts, every motivation. Now, suddenly, my life is going to be functioning at a much higher level all the time. So it's actually a wonderful blessing. Going on, so we have about a half dozen people watching on Facebook, so please feel free to add your comments. And by the way, as an aside, we have more and more people every month joining us learning Kabbalah. We're up to, each month, about 15,000 hours, if you can believe it, with all our Kabbalah classes, and about 40,000 people viewing any Kabbalah class each month. So I know there's a dozen people learning right now, but we generate more and more. So you should know you're part of an exciting class of learners that's learning here in person, in real time, and also virtually. He responded, Tedu kishe'adam over avera omer shelo yir'ani adam chulu.
He responded that the proof that this is indeed a true form of fear, which we're not using, is as follows. For you know that when a person commits a sin, he says to himself, may no one see me.
So I think we all know that feeling. Have you ever been, you're in a rush and there's that yellow light that comes and you're kind of in that zone. You're like, I could stop, but I'm in a rush. I could probably get through, right? And what do? Okay, no cops, right? If you're like me, I'm from Montreal. That's what we do. Maybe it's just me, right? But there's always a little check. Was there a car behind me? Is there someone there? Okay, so long as no police see me. Okay, now I'm gonna go through an orangish light, right? Not a red light, but an orangish light, or whatever, right? If you're doing something that you feel like it's not something that you should do, okay, just let me make sure no one's watching. It's a subtle moment, but I think we all recognize that when we let ourselves down, there's that little check, okay? Or if I am doing something like, okay, I hope no one's watching, right? So lots of examples of that, but that's proof that if I had in my mind, someone is watching me, right? If every time I got that temptation to let myself down and let my tradition down, and whatever my standards are right now, and I had that moment of like, well, as long as no one's watching me, then I stopped myself and I said, well, someone is watching me. Then, if I have that at least in my mind, that's going to be a baseline of awe, where now my Torah and mitzvahs are going to be filled with a different kind of love. And as the Alter Rebbe said, even the positive mitzvahs, and it's not about not doing something that's tempting, but even the positive mitzvahs, they want to have that foundation of yira, so that the love has holiness in it, and there's not ego kind of riding that spiral of love up and up and up, and it's just my ego getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Unfortunately, maybe subtle, but it's still there if I haven't put the era there to start. Is that clear? You getting this? Yeah.
We keep talking about we're working up, we're striving. But how about the fact that looking at it as that God desires us?
Yeah. Is there more? It looked like you're working on it.
Yeah, does God, well, the quote, does God need you? No, he desires you.
That's from someone, right? That's from the guy
Yeah.
you read. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
He's great.
But doesn't that make it a little bit more two-way? Can't that make us, rather than this fear thing that people dislike, or service, it's a partnership.
Yeah, but that wasn't a comment on this chapter, was it?
It's just a comment in general.
Yeah. So yeah, when you're talking about love, sorry, what's his name? It's eluding me for a moment. Who needs love anyways? What's his name?
Steve
you're reading.
Freeman? Yeah,
Oh, that's from Freeman. Okay, good.
I think it is.
Yeah, when you're talking about love, I get that, and I need to see where he's bringing that in, because of course, God desires me, God doesn't need me, and that kind of like the feeling like, well, who am I? Of course, God doesn't need me. God's infinite. I'm created, but God desires me. Now that creates a place for me, and I feel loved, and it creates love in me. I have to see what he was writing about. That's true, and that's beautiful. But I think all of these teachers would, when they're teaching this chapter on this specific topic of how Yira is foundational, they'd still say, yeah, but you got to have that meditation with the Yira there to begin with, right? Because it can also, you must admit, it can go, well, God desires me. Wow, look at me. God desires me. Well, I'm so great, right? Only I can do what God wants. Holy, right? Look, now I got to tell people about how important I am. And
No,
you
it's
could
a
go the wrong
partnership.
way. You're not supposed to. I get you're not doing that. That's not what he's teaching. But if I'm in the wrong place, if I haven't gotten my ego out of the way with the Yira, anything that's happening on the love side, whether it's my perspective or God's, there's always a chance there's going to be a little ego there. You know what I mean? So what you're saying is beautiful. I'm not sure on this narrow point we're making that's the key we're looking at right now.
Okay.
Can you send that to me? I'm curious to see where you pulled it from and what he was writing about. I'd love to see it.
I don't think the partnership is equal, though. It may be a partnership, but it's not an equal partnership, is it?
Well, it's
Wait, your point, Noreen, is that the partnership should be equal, or that it shouldn't be equal?
I'm just saying it isn't equal.
No, it's not.
It is.
It's not. No. Yeah.
I have a comment a little bit off, but what's going on in my head right now is a Bette Midler song. Isn't it God is watching me?
Right.
Isn't
Yeah,
that-
I love that song. But from a distance, right? She says from a
Yeah,
distance.
right.
And so the other is, God is watching us right in front of you. So there's no distance here. This is God that I'm standing literally right in front of, right? This is that God who's saying, really, Smolash? That's how you're going to treat, the people I put around you for you to share, the best of yourself with. That's what you're going to do. We're looking at the God that's watching us from over our shoulder, right?
It's reassuring to those who live alone to know they're not really alone.
Oh, what a beautiful thing to say. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, but in this year where so many people are alone, it also brings amazing reassurance. Absolutely, Doreen, beautiful. Let's go on. So all this fear we're talking about, the Alter Rebbe will say now, that is all the category of yiratata. Because as we said, in Kabbalah, there's many, many distinct layers of love and awe. We're going to go through many of them and learn meditations to channel them and to generate them. All the Yira we've been talking about so far is all the lower level of Yira tata. There's different kinds of it, but it's all the lower kind. That's connected, if you know, to the lower hey of Yud Kei Vav Kei, that name. Rak sheyira zo nikret yirat hata v'yirat chet shekodemet lechochmato.
While the higher fear is a shame-faced fear, that is the state of being abashed and overawed in God's presence.
Right, and let's get the English for anyone following. Such fear, however, is termed yirat hata, lower level fear, and yirat chet, fear of sin. I'll point out, not fear of punishment. This is fear of sin. God doesn't want it. Why would I do it? If God's watching me right in front of me, why would I do something that God doesn't want? And that yirat chet, fear of sin, precedes wisdom. It's only a lower level of fear of transgressing, rather than a fear of God's self. Okay. While the higher fear is an abashed fear. We're not going to use this S word that's here, because no worries, Susan. De'it yirav it yirachulu, for Sue Ellen.
For there are two kinds of fear: the lower level of fear, which leads to the performance of Torah and mitzvot, and the higher level of fear, which results from the proper performance of Torah and mitzvot.
So in 43, we're going to get into more of that, chapter 43. But here, we just want to know, one fear gets me going. One fear is the foundation on which I'm now going to learn Torah, do mitzvahs that can be elevated by my love, because the love is got holiness in it. The love started from a place where my ego was nullified. It was out of the way, and it's awe that does that. And then the love can be my second wing, which I need, and my love and my awe can elevate Torah and mitzvahs. But that's just getting me started, and that's leading me to learn Torah and do mitzvahs in this kabbalistic way. But once I'm doing that, now there's a higher level of fear, yirat ila'ah, which is more like, if he's just touching on it here, it's not that I'm afraid of doing something that God doesn't want. It's just, now I have a sense that God is so great that I'm completely gone. I have such humility in front of that I'm there's no me anymore, and I'm completely nullified. And that's different than really, the kind of yira we've been talking about. But we'll get to that. Aval bli yira klal lo farcha le'ela ba'ava levada, kmo she'of eino yachol lifroch b'chanaf echad.
Without any fear at all, however, if, such as one's fulfillment of Torah and mitzvot, does not soar on high to the supernal sephirot through love alone, just as a bird cannot fly with one wing.
So these are the two wings we've been talking about. That ultimately, I want to start with yira, then add my ava, and now I know those are two wings, and now my Torah and mitzvahs, they're dynamic. They can elevate upwards, and they can bring tremendous light into the world. That's the reason we're meditating here. Did chilu urechimu hen tren gadfin kmo shekatuv batikunim.
For fear and love are the two wings, as stated in Tekin Une Zohar.
There's a yom-yom, there's a daily kind of piece of Kabbalah that one of the Rebbes put together. And one of the pieces says that through tremendous working on yourself, through tremendous effort, a big lamdan, a big someone with amazing knowledge who knows all the Talmud and knows all the halacha and can quote everything, if they work on themselves hard enough, they can reach the level of a simple Jew's Kabbalat ol, right? A simple Jew's sense of awe of just, I'm doing it because that's what God wants. How would I not do it? So much so that you could even see when they're sleeping that they are an Eved, that they are a servant of God. And when you're reading it, you think maybe there's a typo there, right? Well, hold on, shouldn't it be the opposite? Shouldn't it be that the simple Jew, if they work hard enough, they can get to the level of the sophisticated, learned Jew in terms of that? But no, that's exactly it. Even if I'm full of Torah knowledge and I'm learned and I got all the information and I can quote it all, if I haven't started with this simple I'm doing it because God wants it. How would I go against what God wants? I mean, right? Just that simple, beautiful self-nullification. It's almost harder for someone once they have tremendous learning and they're proud of themselves, perhaps, and they really have impressed people, and everyone says, oh, aren't they such a learned person? It becomes very hard for them to get to the level of just a simple Jewish person, like the peasants who were living in these desperate times in Europe, who got up at 5 a.m. and they went and said psalms before they went to work, before they prayed, without even knowing the meaning of the words, just knowing that's what God wants. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get up and do it. And there is something so pure and beautiful about that sense of awe that it's very difficult for someone who hasn't started with it to then now hook on once they have all this knowledge. So don't underestimate the power of generating this awe through this meditation. And now we're going into, okay, now that you have awe, of course, now you need love. So as much as we've been going into the merits of awe on its own also will not elevate anything. It's just dry. And you have to have a love of God. V'chein hayira levada. Hi kanaf echad velo farcha ba leila af shenikret avodat eved. So similarly, who are we?
There we go.
There.
Similarly, fear alone is but one wing, and one's service cannot ascend with it on high, even though it is termed the service, two S's, the service of a servant duly motivated by awe or fear.
So once I have the awe, now I can't remain just a servant, because as we said, there is a negative there, right? When I'm in that role, there's a sense of, well, hold on, I'm not adding anything, I'm not expressing myself, I'm constricted. Now I have to have the service of what we call a child. And it's a little like, we just finished Shavuot and counting the Omer and all that, so we're not far from that whole part of the calendar. And this is exactly what happens with the beginning of the spiritual year, which actually is Pesach, right? When we're born as a nation, and when the year starts in the holiday calendar, that's actually Pesach. And what happens at Pesach? What do we do when we were first born as a nation, and what do we do every year? We just ran out of Egypt. We just followed God into the desert, and God said, "Come, follow me in the desert." We didn't say, "Hold on, we have no food. Hold on, what's gonna?" We just said, "Yes, you said we should do it. We're gonna do it." It was total yira. And what do we do on Pesach? We find every piece of chametz, every piece of puffed up wheat, and we get it out of the house. And as we've said, what does chametz, what does leavened bread signify? It's being puffed up. It's the ego. And on Pesach, we're not just not eating chametz. We can't even have it in the house. We can't even own it. And not only we cannot own it, we have to find every crumb and destroy it. Why does the year start with this fanatic obsession with getting crumbs out of the house and even burning them? It's because when you want to start to serve God, as we said, you need that beginning of yira. You need the beginning of bitul. And so matzah represents me out of the way, right? Holiness, because now I'm gone. But then, once I've gone through the 7 weeks of counting and I've worked on myself, now I can't leave it with just matzah. I can't stay gone. I can't stay in a state of bitul. Now, I need to actually do the offering of Shavuot, which is 2 pieces of challah, two leavened bread, 2 leavened cakes. And there's only 2 times where we're allowed to bring leavened bread into the whole system of sacrifices, right? This is one of them on Shavuot. So once I've gotten myself out of the way and I've gone through working on myself, now I need to bring the leaven as a sacrifice. Now I need to add the love, because you can't stay in a constricted state, which is bitul, which is self-nullification. You can't stay in a constricted state and really function effectively. Now you need to have that expansive state, where, as we said, I'm contributing, I'm expressing, I have pleasure of loving God, I'm showing God how much I care, and that's the second wing. So now with both of them, starting with awe, now the love has to be there for me to function as well. Does that make sense? Let's do a little more. V'tzarich liot gam ken b'chinat ben. 4. Linda, why don't you go ahead if you can unmute?
And Linda already read. That's okay. For there must also be the service characteristic of a son, service motivated by love.
And that's the other wing. That's the other side of the coin. So if we feel like being an Eved, it's that's a little scary, or it's not fun, it's not my kind of service, it doesn't feel like spiritual growth, know that the Alter Rebbe agrees you can't just be an Eved, you also have to be a child. And really, when you make Mother's Day meals for your mom, when you send your parents a card, when you make a dedication for your parents to give them honor, it's natural. We love them, we do it, and that's a more popular, that's the kind of service we enjoy, I as well as most people. So we need to have that as well. That has to be included on our baseline of Yira. לעורר הווה הטבעית על כל פנים המסותרת בליבו שתהא בהתגלות מוחו על כל פנים. Go ahead, Noreen.
In order to awaken at least the natural love for God that is hidden in one's heart, so that he should at least become conscious of it in his mind.
So same dynamic. Maybe I'll feel tremendous love and be dancing with joy, or maybe I'll just be conscious in my mind. As we learned in chapter 16, right? That tvuna love, if you remember the term, that intellectual love, that functions as well to go right to the mitzvah and elevate it. So as long as I'm conscious of both the awe and love in my mind, those can be two wings as well. לזכור אהבתו לשם אחד במחשבתו ורצונו לדווקא בו יתברך. We are, Dan, why don't you go ahead?
Recall his love of the one God in his thought and in his desire to cleave to him. This recollection of his hidden love for God should arouse within him a desire to cleave to him.
And that's the direction of love. When you love someone, you want to be close, you want to be connected, right? It's like that with chocolate cake. I like chocolate cakes. I want a piece on my plate, right? It's like that with my family. I love them. I don't want them to be away. I want to be close and connected. And with God too. Once the love is flowing, now it's a feeling of wanting to cleave and having this dveikus, this cleaving to God. That's just the pinnacle of spiritual seeking. And that's, I think it's obvious for all of us. וזאת תהיה כוונתו בעסק התורה או המצווה הזו.
This should be his intent when occupying himself with the Torah or with the particular commandment he is about to perform.
So that should be my intent. Not that I'm doing a mitzvah because it's so much fun, or because aren't I going to get points in heaven or anything else, but because I want to be close to God, and that's how you do it in Judaism, right? A finite being cannot get close to an infinite being unless the infinite being sends them a line. And the line we got sent is the mitzvahs, and it makes no sense because we're limited. But guess what? If I want to be close to an infinite being, there's no other way than Torah and mitzvahs, and that will leapfrog past that infinite gap between a creator and a created being. לדווקא אבו נפשו אלוקים והחיונית ולבושיהן כנזכר לעיל.
That his divine soul, as well as his vivifying soul, together with the garments, shall cleave to him, as has been explained above.
Right. So as we're speaking words of Torah. It feels like our faculty of speech is one of the lowest parts of us. But as we said, it's actual words of Torah that are never separate from God, and they elevate our soul beyond what we can imagine. So the garments of our soul, thought, speech, and action, can cleave to God through this, and also that light can flow into the mitzvahs we're doing and even elevate our animal soul. We've gone through these dynamics in past chapters. But the take-home is that love, that's when I learn or do any mitzvah because I want to cleave to God. I want to be close to God. I've started with the awe, and now I have the second wing, and now up these Torah and mitzvahs go.
The last paragraph there, in summary, is kind of nice. It says, in summary, a Jew's divine service must embrace both that of a son who serves his father out of love, and that of a servant, even though Eleanor doesn't like the word, who serves his master out of fear and awe.
Right. So we're putting them together, right? It's bittersweet chocolate, right? So there's something about the matching of them it's a challenge, and it's also beautiful. And that in the end, if you want to use that image, if that inspires you, that I don't want to be just a child or just a servant, because each one leaves something out. I want to start with the posture of a servant. What God wants, I'm going to do. Doesn't matter how I feel about it. And then add to it the posture of a child. Of course, I want to be close to my parents. I want to be close to those I love. I want to give them gifts and do what they want and please them and have that feeling of closeness. Put them together. Now you have complete service that elevates Torah and mitzvahs. Beautiful. And now we're going to start to qualify that love a little bit, because, as some people have commented in the past, if that feeling of love, even while it's happening, isn't there a little bit of self-service still there? Because I want to be close to God. Isn't that me that's experiencing that joy? So the Alter Rebbe is going to qualify it, that part of that, even the love side itself, is not just that I'm connecting my garments to God and my soul to God, but in fact, and it comes in a phrase that I'll share with you in a moment, that we say in some traditions before you start praying in the morning, in some traditions literally before every mitzvah you do, that L'shem yichud kutsha brichu shchinta b'shem Kol Yisrael, for the sake of the union, we get into some Kabbalah of the kutsha brichu with the Shechina in the name of all Yisrael. What it means is, no, even though I have this desire to cleave to God, and I want my garments of my soul and my soul to cleave to God, if that's what I'm doing, now, hold on, that's about me again. That's my joy, my love. I want to include in that, I'm actually doing it for every single Jewish person on the planet, and even all my ancestors. Right? I want every single Jewish soul to have a union with the Ein Sof, and by my connecting my soul, I'm actually helping every other soul join. And why is that? And we'll finish on this point, and we'll pick up inside later. It's because the part of our souls that we can consciously explore, the part of our souls that we have in our bodies, the part of our souls we're familiar with, thought, speech, and action, the garments of the soul, the emotional level of the soul, the intellectual level of the soul, those levels of the soul, nefesh, ruach, neshama, so to speak, that's not the greatest part of the soul. That's just the feet of the soul that are in the body. But the greatest part of the soul, the source of the soul, that's actually in the Shechina itself. The Shechina itself, which is God's Malchus, and it's called Knesset Yisrael in other terminology. Knesset Yisrael meaning the congregation of Israel. So here in my consciousness, in my body, I feel like, okay, Smolash's soul, I'm a spiritual person. Okay, I got my awe. Check that box. Now let me have love. Boom! Now I'm connecting to God. Don't I feel great? End of story. I've elevated my mitzvahs, and here I am connected to God. No, you've missed the whole boat, Smolash. Because that's just your soul as it is in your consciousness, in your body. But the soul as it is in its source, in Knesset Yisrael, that's actually, we're all connected there. We're all part of one soul. We're all one being. So I want to have in mind, before I do any mitzvah, that the love is not my personal love for God and my personal cleaving. The love is that at the source of my soul, I should be connected to God. Therefore, every other Jewish soul is also more connected to God, and there's more light going to every one of them. And it's the same idea as doing something in a minyan, that when you have 10 or more people, there's more holiness because you're joining together, you're helping each other. So now the Alter Rebbe is going to qualify, yes, we're now working on love, but it has to be love that includes everybody, that elevates everybody. It can't be a love that's just your own love. Make sense? All right, you've been quiet on Facebook, but good to see we've got people learning with us on Temple Israel's Facebook site. Feel free to email me with any questions if you want to join our Zoom class and pipe up and be part of the learning and conversation. It's amazing. I learn from everyone here, and you're most welcome. Just email Maya at temple-israel.org. She'll send you everything you need. Well, let's finish with just a few minutes of our meditative system. That is the long, short path, which we learned in chapters 16 and 17. Let's change our mode. We're going to relax our breathing. Let that nefesh level of the soul that connects to the body, let it flow smoothly so everything's falling freely towards the ground off your skeleton. Muscles relaxed, spine long. Tongue relaxed, touching the roof of your mouth. Nostrils. Nostrils just relaxed, no flare, eyelids smooth. Let's bring our attention to the first appearance of the soul in the physical, that is our breath. And so if we manage the flow of our breath, we can manage the flow of our soul. And we're going to deepen our breath and get it to flow right down to our belly. As we breathe in, our belly expands. If we breathe out, our belly pulls up towards the diaphragm. And let's even out the 4 stages of a full cycle of breath. So 4 counts for each stage. Stage 1 is breathing in. Stage 2 is letting the breath stay inside and absorbing that oxygen. Stage 3 is breathing out. And stage 4 is letting the breath stay out. It's a good moment to purify your whole system. Often that stage 2 and 4, they're just a moment in the day. I breathe in and I have just pass over that moment of the breath being held. We want to extend it as a full 4 counts. So start with me breathing in through your nose if you can. Breathing 1, 2, 3, 4. Beautiful. Stay there. 2, 3. Now letting it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. And staying empty. 2, 3. Starting the cycle again. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Nice and full of air. 2, 3, 4. Letting it out. 2, 3, 4. And staying empty. 2. Continue the cycle on your own pace. Keep going with the breathing in. And now we're going to open up our wisdom gateway. For anyone new, perhaps, the wisdom gateway is the space between the end of the in-breath and the beginning of the out-breath. So that 4 count space, that opening, that is a natural gateway for wisdom, for chokhmah. We want to open that gateway and sort of stay in that space as we go through the rest of the breath cycle. It's a spiritual idea. If you have your gateway open, let's put that meditation that we learned, that we should be blessed to have reverence for God the same way we have reverence for any other person. That there's always someone watching us, right in front of us, very close. And that perhaps that high functioning state is always accessible if that awareness, that mindfulness is always with us. So introduce that concept. We should have yira of God the way we have yira of any other person who is in front of us. Let it fill the wisdom gateway. Each one of us will have different images in their mind. In Jewish meditation, we want to fill the mind with more and more detail, more and more images focused on the one divine concept. So yes, if your mind drifts to something else, bring it back. But we don't want to leave the mind empty. Let it fill like a cup of wine being poured full to the very brim. We include feelings about those images. We want them to be large and animated on a big screen. We want to be involved. And notice if any feelings are being generated, feelings of reverence or awe. No, those are your tools to use during the day. That's your left wing of your 2 wings to elevate everything you do. We only have a short time here, but feel free to pause your device if you're watching in the future. Remain in this meditation for 5, 10, 15 minutes. Trust me, 1 time a day over weeks and months builds up to tremendous, tremendous mastery of your spiritual emotions and the ability to elevate Torah and mitzvahs to really, surprising levels. But if you're with us, we got to finish our class, so let's open our eyes. Wiggle our hands and toes. Marcia, you're most welcome, Marcia. Thanks for watching on Facebook. Pleased to have a crowd there. We'll sign off. Please join us for our next class. And it's been a pleasure learning with you.